Eilish is a force of nature, really. Bright, bubbly, into everything and always on the go. Her ballet was her favourite. She was very pink, everything sparkly. 2013 was a normal year. Eilish was in playgroup in our little village. She was unwell for about 5 days in October 2013. High temperature on off, a bit of lethargy, like children do, didn't really want to eat anything. She missed her best friend's birthday party on the Sunday, got all dolled up and dressed up, ready to go, and then fell asleep on the sofa. And at that point we kind of realised that this was possibly something a bit more, so we thought we'd better take her to the GP. And I just thought, well, maybe we'll be sent home with some antibiotics and, that'll put everything right. The doctor examined her and asked me if I'd noticed that she'd got a distended tummy, which I hadn't. And she made a phone call and then wanted us to go up to A&E. There and then. They then sent her for an ultrasound scan, and at that point all they'd say is that they'd seen a mass in her tummy. So Eilish was admitted towards C2. They wanted to do a CT scan to confirm. So 2 days later after they confirmed that she had a Wilms tumour on her right kidney with lesions on her lungs. So she had 6 weeks of chemotherapy, and then surgery would be scheduled to remove the tumour. We had Christmas in hospital. She was quite poorly over Christmas, so we were in hospital, and she had her 4th birthday in hospital as well. So after surgery, they needed to test the tumour. They needed to find out exactly what was there, and that would then determine what treatment schedule and what she would have, basically. Unfortunately, it came back that she had anaplastic cells in her tumour, which was the worst kind in a way, the most aggressive kind. We were then told that she would need to have 32 weeks of chemotherapy going forwards with radiotherapy on top of that to make sure that it was all gone. It's gruelling. There's so many inpatient stays hooked up to IV lines of chemo, some of which you needed to be in isolation for, dependent on the medicine, on the drug. But like every child going through, they somehow manage to do this with a smile on their face. They take it exactly as it is. Eilish had whoopee cushions, which she loved to trick the doctors with, sitting on chairs. The biggest thing for me was Eilish's hair falling out. She didn't seem to care about it, but she had these long blonde locks. Being a mum, you comb your daughter's hair every day and all that kind of thing, and, it starts coming out, and it's just another thing that means that, yes, it means, in my head, it means the drugs are doing what they should be doing. They're working, they're attacking those fast-growing cells, but it's changing who that person is. So during the 32 weeks chemotherapy and the radiotherapy, they were looking to do regular checks to kind of keep on top of whether the disease was reducing or if anything was happening. But in April 2014, Eilish became unwell, which concerned them. So they brought a scan that was due forwards, and unfortunately it showed that the drugs they were using weren't working. So they had to think about alternatives. And the doctors were amazing. They spent hours, overnights, I think, even some of them, researching, liaising with colleagues. The team got in touch with the Royal Marsden. There was a trial coming up that Eilish might be accepted on. So we went through the process of doing that, and she was accepted on this trial. So she was started on this new drug, trial drug, But unfortunately, at the end of September, a scan revealed that the mass had returned at the site of the original tumour, and she had more lesions on her lungs, and she was deteriorating. It was felt that there was nothing more that could be done. And a couple of weeks later, we were transferred back home, and we just enjoyed those last couple of weeks that we had together as a family. And on the 13th of October, at bedtime, Eilish had a big sleep. So Aidan came unwell 6th of June 2019. He was a bit wobbly on his legs. It was quite different to Eilish. So took him to the GP, and they were concerned, going down the lines of constipation, but she wasn't sure. So we had a head MRI, which showed nothing, and they sent us home with some medicine. Unfortunately, after a couple of days, Aidan's gait was getting worse, so they sent us to the hospital again. So we were transferred to C2 again, which obviously staff started to recognise us. So he had full body MRI this time, which unfortunately showed he had a tumour at T2, T3 on his spine, which was obviously compressing his spinal cord and causing the issues with the gait. And we were back there again. The decision was to have the tumour removed there and then. So that evening, admitted on Sunday morning, by Sunday evening he was on the operating table having surgery. So once they had removed Aidan's tumour, they obviously sent that off to find out what it was, and that came back as him having Ewing sarcoma. And then we were told that he would need to have 8 months of chemotherapy with some radiotherapy, and they were hoping that they would be able to get him into the Christie at Manchester for proton beam therapy. So in January 2025, Aidan was classed as 5 years clear, so is now in remission. You can't stop him. He's back to that Duracell bunny, running around, loving football. He's the goalie for his under-12s football team, throws himself around, still my little pocket rocket.
These are the beads that I got when I was having treatment. The yellow are for an overnight stay. The red beads are for a blood transfusion. White beads are for chemotherapy. As you can see, I've got quite a lot of them. It just reminds me of how I got through cancer and I overcame it.
Children don't get cancer. You know, that's what, you know, I'd never envisaged that children would get cancer until I was thrown into this world. And then you see so many children who are affected by it. You know, some of these drugs are 50 years old. There's been not much development going forward. For other families going through this, there needs to be so much more information out there. And through research for children, not just the treatments for adults that are changed for a smaller person, actually targeted treatments specifically for children, just to make sure that people don't go through what we've been through. It's something no family should go through.